Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the pivotal events, decisions, and challenges that shape our personal journey. Today's guest is Dione Chan, a former body guide, speaker, and director of ICP Group Australia. Dione specializes in real-world safety, situational awareness, and empowering people, especially women and young people, to become their own first responder. Her journey from personal challenge and high pressure environment is into global visibility and purpose driven leadership reflects resilience, awareness, and transformation. It's really a pleasure having you on the show. D.
Thanks so much, Arif.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure. So, D, looking back, what earlier experience first shaped how you understood safety, confidence, and personal awareness?
How I developed it, do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that came with coming into the fold of security, which was predominantly through my husband. So he was already running a business in security here in Australia, and he said there was a need to have more female presence for specific jobs. So I went and got my license, and I was trained directly under him. And through that, because his foundation is strongly in bodyguard work, he took on any sort of security job, whether it was crowd control or close personal protection, very seriously. And so I was fortunate enough to learn on the go about what it takes to walk into a room and assess risk, every second, every change, every movement, looking for like specific details in people, in movements, in the room, and being able to identify what is out of the ordinary and what would be considered normal. I think because without learning about situational awareness, a lot of it just kind of, becomes background noise, and you miss a lot of stuff because we're not programmed to look for that. Maybe our ancestors were, when we were all always, fighting to survive. But in this day and age, it's just easy to zone out and just go on your phone and not take notice of anything. I was very grateful to learn that quite early on. I've been in security for 13 years now, and I've seen how it's come into my personal life. I think because I practice it so much in my work that I've naturally gotten into the habit of walking into a room and reading, signals that I would otherwise just ignore or not even notice in your day-to-day life. So when I realized that this was very automatic for me, I thought, okay, this needs to be a teaching point, because there are so many people who, like myself, were just kind of getting by in life and missing signals. And I mean, apart from danger, you're missing a lot of information that's readily available in front of you. You just need to learn how to look for it. And the more you practice it, obviously, the easier it gets.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, this is really lovely, and the fact that you get started owing to your husband need more hands into the security and bodyguard system, and now you grow into it, learn everything that needs to be learned, and yeah, you became passionate about it. It's really lovely. So, how did that environment change the way you see people and everyday safety?
Well, because I started to see, like, when you start assessing people and you're observing, say as a security guard, you have the opportunity to stand back and really observe people just being in their normal zone, right? And you pick up on a lot of different signals in body language and their tone of voice. And the more that you observe this behavior, just normal behavior, and even when you add things like alcohol to the element and you see the shift in people's behavior, you start to also see the patterns that come with that behavior. So as soon as you can start picking up a change in tone, a shift in movement, you almost already know now from experience where that could lead to. And this is where it's important with security and even with your daily safety, recognizing what is about to escalate before it actually escalates. So being able to see these signals early on can actually help you make the right actions to avoid a really risky situation.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. So true. So you have described moments in your life that unexpectedly brought public attention. How did that experience shift your sense of identity and responsibility?
What happened was there was a public sort of display of what happened. So, just to give context for your audience, I was working at a concert that Drake, the rapper Drake,
Yeah,
was doing here in Perth. And myself, my husband, and a few others were selected to work alongside his personal security because of our experience as bodyguards. Because he was going to be doing a lot of movement through his concert and he needed that extra layer of protection. And so at some point in the concert, he is walking up the staircase that I am helping to guard from all of the fans that are all trying to reach out for him. And in a split moment, he has noticed me and he's made some flirtatious comments and actually pulled me into the spotlight and made sure that his whole audience knew that he had seen me. And he asked me if I was married, and I said yes, just plain and simple, yes. And he was respectful enough to walk away from that interaction. No arguments, he
yeah,
didn't push, it was fine. And that was the end of it. And I thought that was it. But obviously, you've got tens of thousands of
yeah,
fans recording this moment. And so, within 24 hours, that video clip went viral. I was getting sent a lot of different videos and news articles from around the world of this interaction, of Drake getting shut down. And I was just observing it like I do with everything nowadays and seeing the behavior of, the people
yeah,
responding, how it was being not changed, but, kind of edited by the media to create a different narrative. And it's kind of made me think. Well, I had been sitting on it for a while whether I was going to speak up or not. I was quite happy to let it die in the internet, but the internet's in there forever. And I thought, okay, what am I meant to be seeing here? Because I'm a true believer that everything happens for a
yeah,
reason, and that kind of thing doesn't just happen. And so I really looked into it, and when I realized, I kind of recorded myself speaking of how it played out in my mind and how I relayed it. And then when I saw myself, I realized I was actually playing out what I already do in my security work. So in the video, you can see that he might have put me into the spotlight, but instead of interacting with him, I quickly make an assessment, like I do a full 360 of
yeah,
my area and look at where I am. You can see my eyes go up. I'm looking at my guards, both up on the left and the right, and then I'm kind of like, you can see me even take a breath and realize, okay, I'm cool now. And then I start smiling and then I start interacting. So in that very moment, I put my safety first. And it was so quick, Aro. It was such a flash moment. And this is what I mean by practicing it daily. It becomes second
yeah,
nature. And that is a very important skill to have. If you can do that in a split second and you've prioritized your own safety before anything else, and even in a spotlight like that, where there is, there's stardom, there's celebrity, there's everything, there's the brightest lights in all aspects, and yet it's me. It's my safety first, always. So that's what I got out of it, and that's how I then made the shift to start opening up discussions about it and now teaching people and mostly women as well that are quite interested in this because there's a lot of issues at the moment. So they're learning to do that assessment, especially with children as well, teaching children
yeah,
how to develop that self-awareness for their own safety.
yeah. Amazing, amazing. That was really lovely. And so, what was one of the hardest decision you had to make when transforming from hands-on protection work into educating others?
Into what, sorry, Aro?
Educating others.
Yeah, it was. Well, it's still a struggle, if I'm going to be very honest with you, and that is because for so long I've been in the background.
Yeah,
I've been quite happy to be part of the wall, like a wallflower, I think you call it, and just observing people, not having them look at me. And so that is what was probably the biggest shift for me was now, even though I was put in the spotlight, I'm now having to choose to be in a spotlight that I didn't necessarily choose to
Yeah,
be in the first place. But it's like you're accepting, that this is the pathway that you're meant to take. And yeah, it does become, it's again a muscle that you have to train in that I have to get comfortable with being in the spotlight, being on the stage and presenting to people and just reminding myself of my intention is to help so that my own fear doesn't
yeah,
overcome what I'm
yeah,
trying to do
yeah.
and carrying out this pathway. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I think I love the way you actually just reframe more like when fear comes into being, you just shut it down with the fact that my intention is not just to be seen and to be more like the celebrity of the day, but just to kind of pass the knowledge. And yeah, it's a really, really lovely way of actually like reframing things. Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing. So how did your personal struggle growing up influence the way you teach emotional intelligence and situationship in
I think because growing up, I was a very shy child. I suffered with a skin condition called eczema, and it was actually very severe. So, if for anyone that's not familiar with eczema, these are very open sores all over your body, which is extremely irritating
yeah,
and itchy and very uncomfortable. And when you're a child, you don't really know the reasons to stop scratching. You just
yeah.
have to scratch it. So my poor mum had to, she tried so many things. She put me wearing gloves to bed and she tried so many different creams and ointments and even like herbal treatments and nothing was working. It was essentially something I had to grow out of. And when you grow up with that kind of thing and people are looking at you a certain way, it's easy to then fade in the
Yeah,
background, especially when you're already shy. I didn't want to be looked at. And yeah, that was sort of the foundation of that. And then eventually I did grow out of it in my teens. But then it was the next shift of how do I navigate my life now because I'm so used to being hidden. But then when I met my husband and we got into security together, it was almost like, okay, now I can be this background
yeah,
person, but be really good at my job at the same time. So it was just funny how it kind of led into one another. And yeah, that's how I became to do what I'm doing now. And I guess that observation really helps me today because I'm so used to being the person that's not seen that I make it my effort to see those that are behaving the same way, and helping them to be seen.
yeah. Amazing, amazing. I think I'm glad the fact that yeah, it was really a tough time passing through eczema because I know how it feels and scratching this urging to scratch every now and then and having to kind of heal from it and now helping those who actually more like in the background feel the same way. Yeah, it's really amazing and thank you for what you do. Um, so at what point did you decide that safety wasn't just physical, but also emotional, psychological, and behavioral?
Well, with that whole Drake moment, I decided that I needed to teach this. But when you are so used to doing things almost on an unconscious
Yeah,
level, you now have to learn how to bring it to your conscious
mm,
level and then break it down to become teachable, right? So yeah, it's just like anything that you do almost in second nature. You're not really sure how to describe it in words. So that process for me was a bit of a long one because I really had to break down what I do that seems so automatic for me and then now make it teachable. So I created a framework and so that's what's helping navigate through this. And so, I mean, going back on your question, how it becomes emotional is that there is that emotional factor. So with the first step being scan, you're scanning your environment, you're scanning the person in front of you, you're trying to get
Yeah.
information. It's just like a QR code where you scan for the info, you look for what's relevant and what's out of the ordinary. That's it. Don't delve into too many things. And then from there, you assess the risk. You know, should I be here? Is this person giving me bad vibes? Is this a good workspace to be in? Like all of these things you ask yourself. So scan the environment and assess the risk. From there, find your response. So you would look at how it's making you feel.
Mm.
This is where the insight work comes in. And if it's triggering you or it is making you feel uncomfortable or you're scared to even respond, sit with that for a minute and even bring to the surface any prejudice you have. Like, this is just you internally. Like, if you do hold a prejudice against that person because you were raised a certain way to think of that race or that age or that gender, like, call it out to yourself and go, okay, maybe I shouldn't respond or I shouldn't react because my prejudice of this might come through and come across negatively. So maybe I'm not the right person to deal with this. Maybe I can escalate it. And that's the last step, is to engage or escalate. And this is really the point, to make sure you follow through with what you're going to do. Because in so many situations, we know there's danger or we know there's something wrong, but we never do anything
Yeah.
about it. You found your response, you know how it makes you feel, you know what to do, but then you've not done it. And so then you're still in that toxic workplace, you're still in that terrible relationship, or you're still in a bad situation where it could be risky for you. Like, why would you do that? You need to follow through and do something. Even if you're not the one to do it, find someone who's going to help, escalate it to another party. And I know this is very, very broad, Arrow, because there are so many situations going through my head at the moment. But if I were to just, break it down to one situation, it could just be, with a person or a workplace, and go, you know what, this person I'm working with, my colleague, is really making me feel uncomfortable. What do I need to do? Is it me? Okay, let's look at how I'm feeling about this. Why am I triggered
Yeah.
by that person's behavior? Is it something that I need to work on? Is it because I feel this way, or maybe my mood is off? There's so many contributing factors. It could be, hormonal, you could be on medication, you have to look at everything that is layering your response. Okay. And then if there's nothing at all and you're just uncomfortable, it's a gut feeling now, I don't feel right around this person. Now look at what you need to do. Okay. Do I need to write a letter to my boss? Do I need to bring this up with somebody? Or can I speak to them directly? Do I have the courage to speak to them directly and tell them how I feel? So that's, it's making sure you follow through and do something, and pushing outside of that discomfort. And as someone who grew up as an introvert, that was
Yeah.
very hard for me. And going into security, where I've now witnessed someone with intoxicated behavior, or they're being aggressive. I'm now assessing the situation. If I'm brave enough, I can, speak to that person. But I also know the prejudice people have against me because I'm a female in a security space. So knowing that, and knowing the behavior of who I'm about to deal with, and if I can feel already that that person isn't going to receive me well, I'm not going to be the one to do
Yeah.
it. So this is when I would take on one of my colleagues and say, hey, I need you to go and approach this guy. Or I might go to his friends and speak to his friends about his behavior. And usually the friends will be like, yeah, no worries, we know, we'll take him home soon. So I've not put myself in a
Yeah.
risky situation, but I've still addressed the matter that needed to be done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I
Amazing.
think if they apply it to their own daily life, the framework can be used for everything. It's not just your personal safety, it's everything.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for sharing the framework. Yeah. Save, scan, assess, find your response, and engage or escalate. Yeah. That was really amazing. Thanks for sharing. And for my audience who are out there, let's say for the young boys and young girls out there is this notion most time that upon every field you're actually more like going into, you ought to be confident about it. You ought to know what it's all about. Because I'm just imagining your journey when you get started out. It started out of necessity or into, and after that you build your confidence along the way, and after that you became a voice in it, which you never anticipated from the beginning. So, what would be your advice to the young girls and young boys out there who are still looking more like confused? They don't know what to put their energy, not knowing where to come about, or put their energy more like some of them just have it that you have to figure it all out before getting started. So, what would be your final words to them?
You know, we're just in a time now where everyone is turning to their device for, information, but we need human connection. And what I would encourage for young people to do is to connect. And by that, I mean, you can even start with, when you're out and about with your friends, just sit there having a coffee and observe people around you. My husband and I do this quite frequently, and we have for a long time, where we would just sit and observe. Not that we're eavesdropping or anything, but we can see even from a distance a couple or a family, and we will actually talk it through and go, okay, probably maybe it looks like she's really sad, maybe a parent passed away or something like you just try to
Yeah,
um, I mean, even it might sound ridiculous at first, but honestly, the more that you do it, you start to wonder, you start to get used to it and go, actually, yeah, I was right. And I've picked up on that cue, and you remember it for next time. And the reason this is so important is because when you can start looking at other people in their situations, you develop empathy.
yeah,
And empathy is so important to take into this life, and such a really important skill, because when you can start to understand what someone else might be going through, and it's not that you have to live it yourself or that you have experienced yourself, but really imagine what it is like in their shoes. So anticipate the type of emotions they would be feeling, what their body language would come with that type of emotion, and you really start to get a whole picture of a human being. And that, first and foremost, is one skill I would highly encourage for young people, is to develop empathy, and from there create connections. Go and do, some volunteer work somewhere, anywhere.
yeah,
There's so many avenues. Just look for it and do it and connect.
yeah. Sorry.
That's my
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, this has really been amazing. Thank you for the whole lot of insight. Yeah, and it's really amazing. It's really more like show what, yeah, the making of me. So for my audience who love to connect with you, reach out to you, either for the coaching section you offer, the education purpose, and to connect with you via various media. How can they reach out to you, and where's the best platform?
So I'm active on both LinkedIn, so that's Dione Chan, and on Instagram and Facebook as that security lady. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are the avenues.
Yeah, amazing. I'm going to add that to the show notes for my audience to easily connect. Yeah, thank you, Dion Shan. Your journey just reflects how our live experience, pressure, and pivotal life moments can transform into a purpose and impact. Your story shows that safety, leadership, and confidence are not just thoughts, they are lived, refined, and shared through experience. It's really a pleasure and honor having you, Dion.
Thank you, Arrow. Thanks for having me.